Section 35 of The Undying Monster by Jessie Douglas Kerruish. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 6. The Vow of Sigmund the Volsung. Oliver posted himself in the shadow by one side of the fireplace. Luna sat full in the glow. Swanhild sat on a stool beside her brother and clasped one of his hands as they lay on his knees. Madame York and Goddard were to Luna's other side. "First," began Luna, "I must impress on you that a man's earlier ancestors matter to his history as powerful as do his childish impressions. Subconsciously, the more striking incidents of our first years affect us to the end of our lives, and in the same way the more impressive experiences of those who lived in the world's childhood were bound to subconsciously affect their descendants to the end of time. Moreover, modern people are not so powerful as a rule, either mentally or physically, as those of early times. Then rough living weeded out all but the fittest, and, in a sentence, there were giants on earth in those days. The men and women of partly barbarous ages, also, did not addle their heads by incessant cursory reading and impotent worry over all the affairs of all the world. Therefore they had tremendous stores of vivid mental energy to devote to brooding, for good or ill, over the few thoughts that really concerned them, with a force that affected the structure of their brains and has sent echoes of their thoughts to us along the ages. Remember also that Western mankind now can scarcely realize what religion was to those of far back days. To the bulk of us in this age it is a mere subject for speculation. To our forebears in the Bronze Age it was as real a thing as love and hate, fear and hunger. Yes, and even more powerful, for love and hate, hunger and fear could be overcome at the command of religious belief. Now, to begin, towards the close of the Scandinavian Bronze Age, say about 700 B.C., the time of Hezekiah and Sennacherib in the east, you Hamans had an ancestor named Sigmund of the Volsung line, a great prince of the north. It happened the Volsung race was hounded down until only 2 members of it were left alive, Sigmund and his sister Signy, and Sigmund only survived by fighting, tooth to tooth, with a wolf." Oliver started. She nodded gravely to him. "I relate the tale baldly. Sigmund survived, but, maddened for the time by a share of grief, pain, and starvation beyond human bearing, he broke down in nerve and soul. He did what other men have done, cursed his god. Others have done it, but his curse took a specific form. He made a solemn vow that in the final warring, the Norse day of judgment, when all heroes shall come to life and ride behind the Asa gods to the final war with the powers of evil, instead of having him, Sigmund, the human hero, to help them, they should find him opposing them, as a wolf on the side of the evil powers. Pray remember again how hard it is for us, in these days of higher criticism and Hyde Park oratory, to realize what blasphemy meant in older times. Remember, too, there was no striving for sin. He who sinned must reap his condemnation. When he came to his right mind, the thought of his blasphemy never left Sigmund. Rather, it increased in force, always lurking in the background of all his other thoughts. It was in a wood of firs and pines, on a frosty starlit night, that he fought the wolf and made the vow. Afterwards, when his fortunes were mended, he chanced to be in a starlit pine wood with one of his sons. The associations of time and place brought his long brooding to a head. Lycanthropy was a common mania at the time, and he imagined the curse of his god Odin had come on him. In short, he had a fit of wolf mania. Through hereditary and suggestion combined, his son had a similar attack. They remained in that state, imagining they were wolves and behaving as hungry wolves would to all they met, until the daylight came and their senses returned. To make the story short, the impression on Sigmund's brain was so acute that it passed on to his descendants, and to this time, at uncertain intervals, a man has been born in his line liable to turn, mentally, into a wolf in this combination of circumstances, a wood with pines and firs in it, a cold starlit night, and only one human companion. Do you understand?" Swanhild answered. "As the smell of hot tar reminds us unconsciously of when our ancestors were at Derek Carver's burning, so the pines and the rest of the combination wake the older recollection." "Exactly. When the Carver test was so successful, I knew I was on the right track. Sigmund doubtless consulted his priests, and they told him the mania was a curse from Odin that would haunt his family forever. In consequence, Sigmund's male descendants were liable to turn werewolves, both because they had inherited the brain convolution made by the vow, and because they were told they had it. Please note that last clause. One of Sigmund's sons was named Hamander, and he had the wolf mania, and also he had a specially beautifully bronze sword, which he left to his son and heir. From father to son that sword passed for over 1,000 years, until the Bronze Age Hamander's descendant in the Viking Age went buccaneering to England. His name was Magnus, called Fairlocks, and he surnamed himself Hamander's son, just as we boast our descent from a far-off, distinguished ancestor. Iron weapons had long been in use by his date. It is probably the bronze blade was then a sort of sign of headship among the descendants of Hamander, pretty much as the lordship of the manor of Poynings went with ruby ring in later times. Anyhow, Magnus Fairlocks was so proud of it that he had new hilt plates put on it, with his name on in runes. He came to England, as I said, buccaneering on a ship with a golden dragon figurehead, married a Saxon lady, and settled down in Sussex. Duly he died, and his longship was dragged ashore and buried with him in it, in a mound on a mound, where he had cut a turf and chalk image of the Danes' favourite god, Vingi Thor. His heirloom sword was broken and buried with him because I gather he remained a pagan while his children turned Christian, like their Saxon mother. And on top of the mound they erected a memorial stone with his name and descent on it in runes. In later times this stone was regarded as an accursed druid relic, thrown down and buried, just as the Hove Goldstone was treated 100 years ago. Now the descendants of Magnus, who named themselves Hammand, when surnames came in fashion, had the curse of the wolf in them. The origin had been utterly forgotten. Lycanthropy was very common in the Middle Ages, therefore it was not considered so outrageous as in our time. It came to be regarded as a demon who had power to possess the head of the Hammands.
1 minute, Oliver put in. Didn't it extend to other branches of Magnus's descendants?
No, for we are none of us the sheer victims of heredity. We make our ancestral curses better or worse, for suggestion is as powerful as heredity. It was an article of belief that the Undying Monster, which represented the medieval idea of the mania, could only possess the owner of Danow, and every successive owner was told that, and subconsciously expected it to happen. Unless a Hammand owned Danow, he never expected to be possessed by the monster. If he owned the place, he was always expecting it unconsciously. Only they knew it could only have power in cold and starlit pine woods, and with the best intentions they inaugurated a most deplorable practice. I mean the ritual. They composed a warning rhyme, describing the conditions, and when each heir came of age he was solemnly conducted to an obscure chamber, taught the rhyme and its meaning, and tested.
Tested? Said Oliver.
There are pines outside the hidden room window. With the shutters open in starlight the conditions are fulfilled. I have proved it. This is the ritual I deduced. The heir was solemnly warned and exposed to starlight in the room. In the circumstances he would be certain to have an attack of lycanthropy. Those in the secret knew how to check it, by showing a light. This would warn the youth to avoid starlit pine woods.
But why didn't my ancestors remove all the pines on the estate? Oliver asked. Luna smiled.
Because they were not cowards. They did their best, and if it failed, reckoned it God's will. It would have been unmanly timidity to avoid in their own ground what they were bound to encounter anywhere else, as 2 of them did on the way to Rocamadour. They did all contemporary science could suggest until God chose to arrange a way in which the mania might have died out. If it had not been for the warlock's unhallowed studies. I mean the anchorite, of course. He sought to deliver his race by sacrificing himself, giving up his family and his worldly prospects for the life of a recluse, and prayers and penances by which he sought power to lay the monster forever. That he did lay it, compelling it to lie helpless in the barrow, was firmly believed, and so the power of the mania was weakened. Then came the final dispensation of Providence. During the War of the Roses, everyone who knew the ritual met a sudden end, and Danow came into the hands of a Hammand who had never been initiated into the secret, and who understood the monster had been chained forever in the barrow. That was the turning point, for the mental impression that the head of the Hammands was liable to attacks of lycanthropy in certain circumstances was substituted the conviction that the monster was chained in the barrow. In a few generations the cure would have been complete, and the monster have become a dim memory of something in the past tense. Most unfortunately, Magnus the Warlock undid the good Providence had planned for him, by his occult dabbling. You have heard his version of the opening of the barrow.
I'll elucidate it from the point of exact mental science. He worked by artificial light with one helper. Unluckily, he pitched on cold and starlit nights for the operations. When he reached the figurehead, his ancestral memory began to stir, as it did with you, Oliver. At sight of his golden-plated ancestor's bones and Danish harness, it woke violently, and he was in a perfect state of nervous tension when the artificial light failed, extinguished by the gases from the open ship, no doubt. He automatically thought it was the monster, broken free and triumphing over the hand of glory, and the mania came on him. He killed his dog in the cutting, flinging its body out, and sprang out to attack his assistant. Fortunately, the lantern was alight, and in its rays the mania ceased. He knew what he had done, thinking he was possessed by the monster, but prudently did not tell Swanhild that. Convinced he had released the monster, he recklessly took the inscribed sword hilt, taking his ancestor's runes for a mystic spell. He kept it safe with the hand of glory, and some years later tragedy overtook him. He had sunk low enough to use his own child as assistant in his black magical experiments, and during the course of one in the hidden room he must by accident have lit on the fatal combination of starlight, cold, and pines. The wolf fit came on him, and he destroyed the child. Lady Hammand must have come with a light in the middle of the horror. She died of shock, while he came to his senses and realized what he had done. He had nerve enough not to let the public know he had been the monster's instrument, as he would suppose, but he probably told his father confessor. We know he killed himself after buying the incredible pardon and making a cryptic remark about the hidden room. This reference I rightly understood to mean he merely attributed the disaster to his forbidden studies in it. After that, the course of the mania was plain. The warlock's evil doing had undone the anchorite's sacrifice, destroyed the idea that the monster was chained. The warlock's son killed his own wife. Through shame and horror he would not say what had happened, and pined to death. You will be able to explain every case to yourselves now. When the patient came to himself, he saw no reason to explain he had been the monster's instrument, and the truth was never found out, for the reason that the mania only came on with but one other person present, and that person was invariably killed being taken unawares. Only in 2 cases the patient's own dogs must have killed him when he attacked them. Grandfather killed 2 people, said Swanhild. He was meeting a woman secretly, answered Luna dryly. She had met her fate before the blackmailer showed up and met his in turn. So you have the story from the Bronze Age to now. Only for my part, Oliver looked up now, staring straight before him. I understand it now. Poor Holder gave no warning because the monster's approach was only my brain waking. The rage I felt was a wolf's hate for a human being and dog. The poor old tyke must have run off until I was done with... I can't say it. And attacked him. Only the blow on the head. I don't quite understand that. You slipped as you threw the dog's body away. Other Hammands came out of the fit naturally and knew by their own state what they had done. The blow utterly confused your memory. When I broke up the fit by bringing in the motor lamp this evening, you woke naturally and understood confusedly what you had done.
Totally ruining my beautiful bought and paid-for arm, said the irrepressible Goddard. I was in a stew while I didn't know what was keeping you in check, old man. Of course it was the presence of more than one person. I believe we are to learn how you learnt about all this, Miss Bartendale?
Yes, I must explain my investigation in order that you may all understand the last experiment. End of section 35. Section 36 of The Undying Monster by Jessie Douglas Kerruish. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 7. Judgment Day on the Horizon. When Swanhild told me the traditions I saw there was something at the back of them, something nobody suspected, Luna resumed. The Shah at once settled all question of a fourth-dimensional being. I must tell you that in my professional work I have not yet met with a case of ghostly interference that would stand investigation. But I have established that anything outside of the normal third dimension is always perceptible to a dog or cat or human sensitive. I followed the track of the only abnormality in the wood, that of spilt blood where you were carried, Oliver. I had a suspicion already by that time, knowing you had been cut up a good deal in the war and were in a highly strung state. You seem to suspect me of this enormity pretty quickly, said Oliver. She returned in quite her old patronizing way. Such things are not so uncommon as the laity suppose. I warned you of the fifth dimension, but shelved the idea for my subconscious mind to ruminate on while we tried the church. There I looked at the monster's alleged portraits and found no enlightenment at first. The pardon gave me my first starting point. A man who was bold enough to practice forbidden arts in Tudor days must have committed some abnormal sin before he would fly to the lowest superstition of his time, the bought absolution, and that of the most gigantic proportions. For the time I wondered if the monster really started with him, and tradition had faltered it on his forebears. As we left the church, another glance at the brass brought illumination. The body of the brass monster is roughly human, while the head might be anything from a dog's to a dragon's, and the paws are short-toed dog paws. The monster always tore with grappling hand-like paws. This could not be a literal representation of it. It must be allegorical. A human body, hands and head, the seats of impulse and action animal. Human body and animal thoughts and acts. I saw the meaning of the rhyme at once. Hammand monster, do ye wit, with the race is firmly knit. It explained all. In the anchorites' day it was known it was something inherent in the race, which woke and possessed the victim. The dog's not giving any warning was finally explained. Remember, I have peculiar knowledge, and cases of people who have apparently been possessed by animal spirits are not unusual in my experience. Lycanthropy was what I said to myself as I left the church. Only the hereditary character is unique, in the modern West at least, and that feature engaged my attention at once. Of the origin of wolfmania nothing is known. With the earliest records it is already an established form of madness. Yet it must have had an origin. A man can go insane through shock or physical accident, but he doesn't imagine he is a particular animal without some mental prompting, and some crime against nature is at the root of all abnormal heredity mania. Crime committed by a single person sometimes extends its punishment to the guiltless through long ages. Might it be possible to find the origin through your hereditary memory? You see, even at that early stage the hope of doing away with the bane had come to me. I had learnt it was a creation of the fifth dimension, an impression of the brain that obsessed the brain's owner in specific conditions. Like cures like. If I could find the exact origin, might I not be able to banish it by a counter-impression? So I kept my counsel. The matter was so long established that only the exact truth of its origin would serve, and I had to keep you in ignorance, Oliver, lest you should unconsciously start to invent particulars. I had to test your recollection by association alone, and see what light archaeology and the family history would shed on what I elicited. At that stage all was a chaos of disconnected data, but the hidden room at once afforded something to start from in the shape of the Scandinavian sword. I had noticed that the family features, like the family name, pointed to a Danish origin. The north was the home of the werewolves, and the Danish sword and the runes on it might prove the clue to the monster's origin. The connection with the hand I did not then understand, beyond its proving the nature of the warlock's work. It will be obvious now how I deduced the ritual, and that it was extinct before the warlock's time. This extinction was explained by the pedigree, also how Providence had enabled him to start life with the entail of the curse broken, and that in some way he must have ruined this advantage through his occult studies. While my learned friends wrestled with the runes, I tested your memory in the way you know. When the Danish sword suggested golden pigtails in the field fought, I wondered if the warlock had taken it from some Danish grave, in which case the use of the hand was evident. I had already surmised the monstrous man was a Danish creation, as was the corrupt name Thunder's Barrow. The legend of the hidden gold was another step, and my friends reading the name of your ancestor clinched matters. Then your persistence about the inscription on the bronze blade made me certain that inscription contained the secret, since memory of it had survived when the ritual was forgotten. I was right and wrong in the Barrow matter, right as to the warlock's digging, wrong as to his motive, as I realized when the gold-plated figurehead appeared. The excavation was an apparent failure, but it was not utterly so, for in the course of it I learnt how strong your dormant memory of old Danish matters is, Oliver, and that encouraged me to persevere. I decided to try a serious experiment. You remember that night I hypnotized you in the drawing-room, and that when you were waked 2 hours later we simply told you we had elicited nothing fresh? Well, during those 2 hours Swanhild and I took you into the hidden room, bringing you back before you waked.
"By Jove!" exclaimed Goddard. "Pardon the interruption. I'll tell you about it later, Oliver."
I told Swanhild the truth as soon as you were asleep. She could not believe it without evidence. Therefore, leaving Auntie in the drawing-room for fear a servant might come on some errand and be puzzled by her disappearance, we took you to the room. There I made you stand inside a chalked pentacle, impressing on you that you could not move outside it, placed the hand, sword, and golden plates in your view, turned the light low and hid it, and made you believe you were alone with Swanhild in the starlit night with pines near. The effect was overwhelming, the werewolf fit coming on at once. You were unable to get out of the pentacle, however, which told me the strong power of suggestion I had acquired. While you were in that state, I summoned Hamander, your ancestor, to appear, calling him by his proper designation of skin-turner, and hoping to get further information from you. But you were incapable of coherent human speech. To all intents, you were a mere animal for the time. It grew painful for Swanhild to bear, so I conducted you back to the drawing-room, leaving her to recover a little. Oh, I'll tell you that in detail later. Next day, Slinfold's narrative turned up, we secured the inscribed stone, and it proved to be the final clue. On Thursday, my professor read the runic inscription on it, and this is how it runs.
She unfolded a paper. Oliver held it to the light and read. Edith, his wife, and Olafur, Ragnwaldr, and Swanhild, his children, raised this memorial to Magnus, that was named Fairlocks, that was of the blood of Hamander, Sigmund's son, the Volsung.
It was quite enough, Luna resumed. It linked you with the Volsung tale as told in the Elder Edda. Now pray attend carefully that you may understand my weak link. On getting the translation, I applied to the British Museum and had a summary of the Volsung tale prepared from different versions of the Edda. One point eluded me. There must have been some exact connection between the fight with the wolf and the lycanthropy, but that connection was not apparent. The mere fight with the wolf was not enough to induce the abiding mania. At last my museum assistant, at his wit's end, was reduced to consulting poetry. He produced William Morris's metrical version of the Volsung epic, and in it is Sigmund's vow, which was not introduced in any of the prose translations at my command. This vow idea offers such a convincing and logical reason for the mania that I related it to you in its proper place. Still, it is the weak link. An explanation is not necessarily the true one simply because it is plausible. On the other hand, a true poet can so enter into the thoughts of others, even of the dead, that he can often explain a motive of which no tangible record is available. That is the history of the Undying Monster. Its cause, blasphemy when men believed with heart and soul, and brain. Its agency, a kink in the brain, and the unfortunate heirs of that kink. Its effects past summing, ramifying from homicidal mania, to put it scientifically, to a crop of disgraceful legends. Now I shall lay before you the feeble hope I have of ending the history, for the monster may be undying in itself, but liable to be killed if my weak link holds.
Oliver raised his head and looked full at her as she went on.
I came down today with the intention of making the experiment. I have only had to hurry owing to these arrests. What I purpose to do in a sentence to make the wolf mania work itself out.
The mania work itself out? How? He asked hoarsely.
By working backward through your memory right to the Bronze Age, until I persuade you are your own ancestor, Sigmund the Volsung. There was much method in my putting you through your paces at our different sittings. Your memory for ancient Danish religion is very powerful, as I proved apropos of the last warring 2 days ago. I shall wake all recollections connected with Sigmund, then carry it further by suggesting that you, as Sigmund, die, that the final warring comes, that the wolf mania has worked itself out in accordance with the terms of the vow, and that Sigmund has been forgiven by the gods and taken into the company of the gods and the risen dead at the recreation of the world. In this way the convolution of the brain that harbored the wolf mania will be altered, and henceforth only hold a vague complacent sense of something done with. Do you understand?
I do now, if it succeeds.
Oh, do not hope, she begged. The weak link, no more than the idea of a poet 3,000 years after your ancestors' time, is so very doubtful. But we will try. I shall rouse the wolf mania in the hidden room, put you in hypnosis, and do as I have described. Then we shall repeat the conditions for rousing the mania. If it does not wake, then you are a normal man forever. But if it wakes, the vow idea is wrong, and, The problem of the future is for you to settle.
End of section 36. Section 37 of The Undying Monster by Jessie Douglas Kerruish. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 8. The Hour of 3,000 Years. At 7 o'clock, Luna and Oliver were at the end of a short conversation alone in the Holbein room.
"It's time," said Luna. "You quite understand, Oliver? You must not hope for fear of the...
She hesitated, her eyes seeking his miserably. For fear of the disappointment if the link fails, he completed.
If it fails. But I must hope. For if the link does not fail, the whole may yet fail if I do not do my work well. And one cannot work convincingly without hope. It rests on the link, and on me equally."
"It is cruelly hard on you, Luna. It hurts me that you should stand such a strain."
"Oh, I have to consider my own feelings as well as yours."
She saw he was weakening and braced herself back to her usual manner.
"Our assistance should be done now. There was not much to do. Swanhild and Goddard only had to put pine boughs round the hidden room window. Anything to accentuate the circumstances, and Auntie to superintend the transport of the piano."
"Eh? The piano?"
"To the corridor outside the spring cellar. Your reference to Wagner gave me the idea. Anything to accentuate the Norse atmosphere. Besides, it pleases Auntie to be useful to one of her beloved boys. I hear her coming."
They stood up. "The hour that will settle if I must shoulder the curse of the dead." He looked up at the warlock's portrait. Or, oh, Luna.
"Oh, Oliver."
Her voice was unsteady. She stepped close to him and held out her hands. He bent his head, but again ingrained discipline asserted itself, and his kiss only touched her forehead. Only, he pressed her chilled hands to his own burning face for a moment.
"That's right," she said. "We can't afford to be unmanned. We must be captains of our own souls, and pray God the link holds."
Two cold and steady young people accompanied Madame York to the disused complex. The piano stood by the open door over the water. In the hidden room, Swanhild and Goddard were adjusting the last big pine bough beside the open shutters. All the party wore their thickest coats, for it was very cold in the stone room, with the wind pouring through the window. Madame York remained at the piano, able to hear, but not to see what went on in the room. The four young people were very quiet. 3 pairs of eyes followed Luna's every movement. With the hush and the blowing air, branches and gurgle of water, it was suggestive at once of out of doors and an impending operation. The warlock's table was at the foot of the stairs. The free space beyond it was still filled by the chalk pentacle, now somewhat blurred. Between the chalked line and the window were heaped the gold plates of the figurehead. The hand and the bronze sword lay on the table beside a lamp that could be shrouded in an impromptu screen. Luna nodded to Oliver. He stepped into the pentacle where a chair waited. She took a stick of chalk and remarked the lines.
"Remember, you cannot step beyond these lines," she told him, her eyes holding his. "Look, pines and stars to be seen outside the window, and cold wind, and—"
She gave a gesture, and the other 2 ran up to the niche.
"And only one person with you. Garul Hammand!"
She slid the screen round the lamp. The room was black to Goddard and Swanhild as they peered down the stairs, and quite still for a minute. Luna stood with teeth clenched and palms damp. Her eyes became adjusted to the dark, and as she discerned a star or 2 through the grill, 2 red sparks lit at the top of the vague black bulk that was Oliver in his chair. The demoniac barking howl that Goddard and Swanhild had heard before broke out. In the corridor, Madame York clutched her ears. Simultaneously, Luna swept the screen aside, and the room was lit again. The howl stopped halfway. The 2 in the niche returned to their posts at the table. Oliver stood, shaking convulsively in the pentacle, his face just losing the vulpine appearance it had worn in the Shaw. Before he could speak, Luna flicked a hand commandingly towards him.
Sit and sleep,
she ordered. He sat down, his lids drooping. She closed the shutters and then commenced the process to which all were now used. She carried him back through the history, showed him at the proper stages the hand and golden plates, and finally gave him the bronze sword to hold while she explained he was Sigmund Volsung's son. At that he recognized the blade at once. He had owned it as Hamander, but it was first made for Sigmund. Then she spoke of old Danish gods and beliefs, and finally carried him through Sigmund's history, from the fight with the wolf and the vow to his death. Completely under her mental control, he lived over every detail she suggested, as he had lived over the horror of Carver's martyrdom at the first sitting. Then she seemed to wake to life. Her voice took on a fervid cadence that seemed to fill the whole room with a thin, hushed mass of sound.
Sigmund Volsungson, vower of the wolf vow, I speak to you, she began.
I hear whom am Sigmund the king, son of Volsung the king, and the vower of the wolf vow, he answered tonelessly.
Sigmund, you are dying on the strand of a strange country, she went on, dying after a battle wherein Odin's self came to slay thee.
The old man in cloud-grey raiment, who smote me down with a stained twybill, was truly Odin himself, he quietly assented. He sat rigidly at attention, his eyes following her every movement.
Do you know who it is that bends over you as you die, Sigmund? She answered. It is your queen.
He turned his head to the right, but his eyes remained directly to her. My queen, Hjordis, he said, and staggered to his feet and stood swaying.
Let me die standing, as a Volsung should, Hjordis, he cried in a voice gone suddenly feeble. Alas, now is the life gone from you, Sigmund, exclaimed Luna.
Immediately he collapsed into the chair, but ere he well fell back, her voice changed and clanged out ringingly.
Sigmund, awake, she called. Hear the call to Godholm, Volsung soul. Arise and come away.
I come, chooser of the slain. He sat up as though galvanized.
Die Valkyr,
she called, turning her head to the stairs, and from the corridor, made mystically impersonal from the invisibility of its source, the ride of the Valkyries swelled through the room. Through what followed, it made a background of swooping, galloping melody, with the gurgle of the spring running behind it, through which Luna's voice pierced, thin and clear, in a steady thread of recitative.
Mount and come, Sigmund, thou sunlit hill of battles. Mount and ride with the Valkyrs, the choosers of the heroic slain. Hear the clatter of our horse hooves on the stairs as we gallop through the sky. See Volsung's sun, the storm clouds, fleeting past us like wisps of mist. See the world wax small and ever smaller beneath us, and hold fast lest you fall.
The blankness of Oliver's face was gone. It was flushed. His eyes flamed red. His hands were held in a way that suggested the grip of an imaginary bridle. At her warning, his knees crooked and stiffened as though calves and thighs gripped a horse's sides.
Onward! Ever onward!
She proceeded.
The earth is past, the stars are past. The firmament's very rim has felt the last touch of our horse hooves. Winter and summer are outraced. We reach Valhalla, Sigmund Volsung's son. Enter Godholm, son of Volsung. Enter and rest and feast until the day of Odin's need. You are in Valhalla, Sigmund, feasting, wrestling, fencing with your peers in Einhyrr, ever living through the short years of unwearying days. The centuries are sweeping past on mid-earth, Volsung Sigmund. Long wars there are, and short times of peace, but they pass unnoticed in Valhalla, in the fair companionship of Einhyrr. With the leaves of Yggdrasil, the holy ash, ever soughing overhead, and Odin's self in the shade of it. The peace of Valhalla. And now wake, Volsung's son, for the ages have passed like a night's dream, and it is the Fimbulvetter tide, the day of Odin's need, of the need of the Asa gods, son of Volsung.
Her voice had risen gradually. It dropped now to a thin thread. The music ceased, and the pianist began an improvisation of her own in a minor key that barely seconded the gurgle of the spring and formed a flat, nebulous background to the flexible voice.
Look down and abroad from Valhalla's golden wall, Sigmund,
it exhorted.
Look as the Asa gods and your fellows the Einherjar look to earth in the Fimbulvetr tide. The fated 3 winters of war are overpast. The torn and tangled nations would fain be at truce to till the ground fattened with 3 years of shed blood. But the judgment of the Norns is upon them. They have spun and carded and sheared, the Norns of past and present and yet to be, and the latter days of Fimbulvetr tide follow the first. 1, 2, 3 winters, year-long winters of cold, and mankind is spun out and carded and sheared by the 6-fold winter of war and cold. As wool is spun and carded and cut by mankind, so is their fate dealt with on the distaff and spindle of the Norns. It is the time of the Ragnarok. The sun and moon are darkened, the stars vanish in the shriveling arch of Ymir's skull. It is the day! The day of Ragnarok, Sigmund, son of Volsung. The earth is quaking. Valhalla's self trembles.
Her voice had become a steady, toneless chant. Oliver sat upright, quivering in every limb.
The earth trembles, Volsung, son. Look how Fenrir, Loki's son, Fenrir the wolf, has burst his bonds and rages over the shrinking land. Yes, and behold how Jormungandr, the serpent, no longer reposes, tail and mouth, to hold the waters steady around the world, but strives to climb a land and lashes the troubled waters, wave on wave, so that they overwhelm the shore. See the waves writhing upwards even to the shriveling sky, son of Volsung, and see what creeps forward on the lashed welter of them. Naglfar it is, son of Volsung, ship Naglfar, builded through the ages of dead men's nails, and launched now and sailing with a crew of hell's legions to the wreck of Godholm. Look to west, look to the blazing mountain of Muspelheim, to the flaming mount where bide Surtur and the sons of the flame. It is Ragnarok day, son of Volsung, and they arise. They saddle their flaming horses, behind Surtur their lord they ride through the splitting heavens to the wrecking of mid-earth and Valhalla. See, too, how Hell's own jaws open, and Hela its ruler, and Asa Loke emerge, and range beside the flaming chargers. From Muspelheim they advance, and the flames and gleeds of it following them like hounds of fire. And wake now, Volsung's son, for Heimdall has climbed the highest height of Valhalla, and, hear it now, he has sounded the Gjolar horn. Lo, the Asa gods and Einherjar rouse them. Hear how it drowns the very blast of the Gjolar horn. The clangor as the Asa and the Einherjar fling on helm and cuirass and snatch their weapons, and hear the sound of the peace strings snapping.
Oliver sprang to his feet. His face was transfigured, shining with a radiance from within as he towered before her, staring right over her head at some imaginary sight, chin up, eyes flaming and flickering under tautened brows. A long snarling call rippled from his throat.
"A Volsung! A Volsung!"
She made a little gesture to the chair he had left.
"Cuirass and belt, sword and helm and shield," she said.
He went through a rapid pantomime. Taking an invisible object from the chair, he went through the movements of dragging it on over one arm, and his head, pulling it down round waist and hips, and buckling it down the side, his hands moving with feverish haste. Round his waist an invisible belt went, then a helmet on his head, with some adjustment of it over the ears. Something was lifted with reverence from the chair and slung to the belt, something else slung on the left arm and hitched over the shoulder. It was intelligible enough. As he shifted the imaginary shield into place, Luna spoke again.
"Die, Walker, once more,"
she called up the stairs, and again the tremendous music surged forth and filled the room. Very coolly and gently her voice took up the thread of recitative.
"The choosers of the slain, and now the leaders of the slain to the unshapen isle, and the last warring of the gods, and the sons of the flame. Look how the hordes of Muspelheim reach Bifrost Bridge, which mortals name the Rainbow. See them crowded, rank on rank, and the flames and gleeds behind them. See, Bifrost bends, Bifrost breaks beneath them. It comes apart. See its splinters falling to the foamy sea below, where rides Naglfar, opalescent splinters mixed with the gleeds and sparks of the flame. Sea Searcher and his legions are in the wallowing flood. Their steeds strike out, but the gods are on the strand of Valhalla. Their snowy chargers breast the waves as do the flaming steeds of hell. The Einhirjar are streaming down from the gates of Valhalla. Volsung, Sigmund, vower of the wolf bow, why do you alone delay?
A look of the most blank and abject horror came to Oliver's face. The clear battle light in his eyes altered to an unfocused glare of dismay. He stopped in the first movement of a rush forward, and hung awkwardly on one foot.
Vower of the vow, you who swore to be a wolf on the day,
she said quietly. He stayed as he was, glaring before him.
Sigmund, you cannot join the Einhirjar, she went on. You restrain yourself with difficulty. You know who vowed the wolf vow, that no beast nor bestial man can smite upon the sides of the gods in that day. If you join the strife, your place will be with Wolf Fenrir and the horde of Suture, and you will tear the throat of Odin's self, even as you blasphemed him in your despair. The vow is coming to its fulfillment, son of Volsung.
As she spoke the word, Oliver went on all fours within the pentacle. The inhuman werewolf call crackled and roared out, and so he crouched, propped on his palms and writhing in every muscle. End of section 37. Section 38 of The Undying Monster by Jessie Douglas Kerruish. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 9. The Last Twilight and After.
The Einhirjar ride, and you may not ride with them, Sigmund, son of Volsung,
Luna went on, intoning now in a species of level chant.
Shall not he who blasphemes Odin All-Father reap the harvest of his tongue, though it be not until the day? You restrain yourself even as the Einhirjar ride in your sight, who would have been their peer and comrade in the day, but for the sin of your brain and voice. See they pass, your father Volsung the king and your brothers with him. There your forefathers, there the Nibelung brethren, dark in the blue Nibelung mail. There ride your sons, Helgi and Hamander. There sing Fjotli, Signesson, who was a wolf with you in your life. There, all golden in dwarf-wrought helm and harness, is Sigurd Fafnir's bane. Your sons, Sigmund of the wolf vow, for the sin of your lips you must stand aside on the day, yet, by Odin's dear grace, your flesh is battling by the side of the Asa gods in this tide whereto all time has led.
She ticked off each name with a finger in the air, and Oliver's eyes followed the gesture as though he saw what she described. His face was completely wolf-like. He strained the upper part of his body forward as he writhed on all fours, with his hands on the chalk line of the pentacle, precisely as though it were a concrete barrier he could not pass. Cold as the room was, his face ran with perspiration, as though a rainstorm were beating on it. Swanhild gave a little cry. Goddard slipped one arm round her and placed his hand over her eyes.
There ride the kings of the north, of Denmark and Norway and Sweden. There Olaf Tryggvason, for all he brought the white Christ to northern lands, and with him Einar Tambarskilver, and Kofbjorn, and even Hakon too of Lad. There is Canute, lord of all the north. There Sigurd Jorsalafar. There, stream on stream of them, the Byzantine incense fumes still in their helmet plumes, come the Varangers. There they come, one and all, the heroes of the north. Only you, Sigmund of the wolf vow, must stand aside on the day.
Oliver was alternately straining against the pentacle's line and rolling on one side and the other like a rabid dog, writhing all the time, barking, snarling, and panting loudly between the paroxysms. The chant picked up speed. They ride the sea. Look, Sigmund, you who must stand inactive on the day. Asa gods and Einhirjar, ghost crew of the Nagelfar, horde of Hela's realm and sons of the flame, they ride the sea. See Odin lay about him with his twybill. See Thor's hammer rise and fall and rise bloodied. See the Einhirjar smite. It is vain. She lowered her voice still further, and the music died off until she was speaking with increased hushedness to the mere accompaniment of the gurgling water and the sough of wind between the grills.
Wulfenrir seizes the throat of Odin. Where is the Allfather? Dead. Allfather Odin is dead, and for the sins of his mind and lips, Sigmund could deal no blow in his defense. Look! Look! Aesagod Tyr is down. Garmr the dog has him. The sons of flame win. They win. The Aesagods are slain. The Einherjar drop one by one. Searcher is calling to Muspelheim. He orders. The mountain of the flame answers. It pours its fires, stream on stream, over the earth. The sea vanishes in a spurt of steam. The streams of fire rush. Splashing wave on wave, they overwhelm dead gods and dead Einherjar. They beat against the golden walls of Valhalla's self as waves beat the seaside rocks. The wall of Valhalla melts. The flame waves overflow Valhalla. The earth reels. The sky shrivels. The sun and moon alike drop into the sea of rocking flame. Only Yggdrasil the ash stands, quivering amidst the wrack. The gods are dead. Then, Die Götter Dammerung, she called, and the somber cadence of the funeral march of the gods rolled forth. In the pentacle, Oliver cowered, half exhausted and foaming at the mouth. Luna's voice sank even lower as she proceeded, and the words came slower and slower. Swanhild, seeing nothing with her actual eyes, beheld all the other women put into words. In the recesses of her brain, inherited memory would have responded, in that hour of highly strung emotion, to the mere thunder of the ancient northern names. The images briefly sketched with Luna's magnetic voice made a magic reality of it all. In the dark behind Goddard's soothing hand, Swanhild forgot even her brother, as she lived through the twilight of the gods and the death of the universe, as her ancestors had foreseen it for thousands of years. All are dead. Aesagods, earth, and Valhalla, and time. Only Sigmund, son of Volsung, lives on in an unliving life. He who for his tongue's sin stood aside on the day. He who did penance for his sin by standing aside on the day. Look upon creation, Volsung Sigmund. A fire-scorched nothing it lies in your sight. Only ash Yggdrasil stands firm over the wreck. Earth is but an icy-cold wilderness now that the sun is dead. The sons of flame, they who won, died as all powers of evil must die in time. The ages pass, age after age, unreckoned in this eternity after the death of time. Muspelheim's fires die. The ice of the gaping gap, whence came the universe, crawls over their slaked ashes. Only Yggdrasil stands in a dead creation. But Volsung, look! Her voice rose with electrifying sharpness and the music ceased. What is happening to the tree, and what is toward on the earth? The ice is warming, turning to rivers as a new sun glides up into the new forming firmament. They cut themselves channels in the earth's surface. They run. Greenness is creeping over the dead world. Trees are budding from the clefts of the barren rocks. It is spring. Time is born again. Oliver cowered in a quivering heap, his scarlet beast's eyes fixed on her. Look, she cried. Who ride forth on the newborn earth? Whence did they come? Horses trampling joyously, harness chiming, voices calling, friend greeting friend. The Einherjar are risen. Who rides at their head? Odin arisen. Who ride amidst them? The Aesagods arisen. Odin and Thor and Tyr and Balder. The gods are arisen. She rapped an order aside to the stairway, and the commanding clamor of the Song of Awakening rang out. Penetratingly clear, her voice chimed in with it. Odin calls! Odin calls his chosen heroes by name to the glory of the new heaven and earth. Rise, rise, Volsung Sigmund! For the first name Odin calls is the name of him who vowed the wolf vow and expiated it by his self-made agony of remaining aloof on the day. Rise, forgiven Sigmund, wolf vow worked out and atoned. Rise and join the Aesagods and Einherjar in the newborn Valhalla forever. As her voice ceased, so did the music. Goddard gave a little cry and snatched his hand from Swanhild's eyes. She blinked for a few moments, dazed by the change from tremendous melody to silence intensified by the blurred sounds of wind and water, and at the waking from cosmic myth to the concrete lamplit room. "Look at Oliver," Goddard whispered. Oliver was on his feet in the pentacle,
almost on tips with the gush of alert energy that had straightened him upright, chest out, chin up, hands raised in what Swanhild somehow knew was the root attitude of worship in all humanity. His face was the wolf face, only the eyes were not red. They were human eyes, Oliver Hammand's normal eyes set in the wolf mask. And no sooner had his sister realized that than the wolf features changed. They did not fade gradually, as in the Shaw, into his natural features. Rather, they vanished between two flicks of the watcher's eyelids, and Oliver was there in his pleasant human entirety. Only, he seemed bigger and more splendid than he had ever been before, and his eyes blazed with a steady, ecstatic scintillation, as though they reflected the light from a world beyond ours. "Worked out, and forgiven. I thank you, Odin Allfather," he cried. "Forgiven forever, wolf nevermore." Luna, before him, seemed almost tiny and insignificant by contrast with his radiant, magnificent manhood. She trembled and shrank back, then pulled herself together. "Wake Oliver Hammand!" she ordered. He shut his eyes a moment, gave a little sigh, and opened them. "Why, what?" he began, looking round confusedly. "You were going to hypnotize me, weren't you?" "In a minute," Luna snapped. "Up the stairs," she called to Goddard and Swanhild. They obeyed without a word. It was the final minute. "I want to try you again, with pines and starlight, and only myself present," she said to Oliver. Then she swung the shutters open and shrouded the lamp. There was a long pause in the darkness. Swanhild clutched Goddard's arm and found she was trying to pray with half her mind. "The stars are very clear," said Oliver quietly at last. "I don't quite understand. I thought you tested me for the wolf mania you told me about. And I thought you were going to mesmerize me. I'm sure I remember sitting down, and I was standing up just now. I'm quite muddled." He stopped vaguely. The pine branches smelt powerfully on the wind through the grill. By that time, Luna's eyes were adjusted to discern the points of peaceful light beyond the ironwork. "Pines, stars, cold, and one companion. Garul Hammand," she said. "Good Lord, I remember," he cried sharply. "You told me I go mad, turn to a wolf in such conditions. Didn't you make me do it just now? I'm all confused. Only it really doesn't affect me at all. Makes me feel rather pleasant. It's all so fresh and nice-smelling and quiet. Luna, does it mean you were mistaken about it? But I remember the Shaw. I feel all confused. Am I crazy?" "Not crazy. Cured." She flashed the light on again and confronted him, her eyes almost wild, her breast heaving as she half sobbed. "Not crazy. Cured. You are a normal man for the first time." "Normal?" he repeated. "Good Lord, I remember fully. I am to tell the police—" "You are to remember fully that though you must tell the police you are a normal man," she answered. End of section 38. Section 39 of The Undying Monster by Jessie Douglas Kerruish. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 10. A Night of Cloudless Stars. Swanhild and Goddard came down into the room, and after them Madame York. Oliver hid his face in his hands for a minute. Then he raised it again and squared his shoulders while he regarded his surroundings. The gray of the room, black shadows dancing in it a little as the draught rustled the pine boughs round the grill. The gold plates, hand of glory and bronze sword on the floor outside the pentacle. The others very quiet, as people are after a climax. His look came to anchor on Luna as she leant against the window-sill, the breeze drifting tendrils of golden curls round the wide, haggard eyes that stared, all pupil, at him. "I'm rather confused, you know," he said at last. "You've all had more or less time to understand the business. I've only had tonight. But two things I do comprehend. That I'm normal, and that I must ring up the police at once. And somehow I don't feel either sorry or glad, afraid or hopeful. It's all been so sudden, and the idea that I was to lose you, Luna, had not time to really get a grip of me before you found that the link held. That it held, he repeated. That God has allowed you to give me hope of a future, in spite of disgrace. He ended indecisively and in a different, kindly tone. You're used up, dear, he said. We'd better get you out of this. He offered his arm. She linked her hands round it, and for a moment, elation sparkled fiercely in his eyes. I'm normal. A sane man. Whatever disgrace comes is inevitable, and not our fault. We are equals, you and I, he exclaimed in a voice for her ears alone. Not equals, dear, she whispered back. My work is done. Now you are the man, the strong one, and must shield me. The plea was what would rouse and steady the best in him. A great calm came to his face, and with it he seemed to grow more vital and virile. He would fail at times, but from thence onward he would always be in his normal mood, what he was then, a strong man who had thrust the hopeless past aside and turned all his powers of soul and brain to molding the future for the comfort of the woman who had earned him the right to mold it. They both forgot the others as they climbed the stairs without further words, their arms linked for the first time. Swanhild took the lamp and Goddard closed the shutters. Of all this crowd, I'm the most upset, observed Madame York, presumably because I have the least concern in the matter.
That, said Goddard, is sound psychology.
Outside the gallery door, Walton hovered. So he had hovered during the first investigation, only now at night he was more abjectly terrified. Thank heaven, sir, he quavered. Luna would have drawn away from Oliver, but his big right hand shut down on both of hers and held them on his arm. Well, Walton, what is it? He asked. Inspector Burrell, sir. Just rung you up, sir. I told him your orders were you were not to be disturbed, but I'd tell you when I could. Luna's hands twitched on Oliver's arm. He smiled down reassuringly into the agony of her eyes. Very good, Walton. Tell the inspector I expect the call, and we'll have a few words with him immediately. Walton hurried away. It's as well it has come at once, both for the two fellows and our own sakes, said Oliver quietly. Swanhild, you'll get your motor things to run round to the aids. Goddard, you'll come with me. No, Luna, dear, I'd rather you went into the Holbein room a minute. She obeyed without protest. Swanhild ran upstairs, glad of something active to do. Within a few minutes, she would be helping to bring the family name down in eternal ruin. What would they do to Oliver? Put him somewhere as a dangerous maniac? And poor Luna who had risked all to save him. In her room, 2 photographs caught her eye. She found herself thanking God silently her father and mother were dead. When she reached the door of the Holbein room, the men were still at the telephone across the dusky hall. Oliver dropped the receiver and stared at Goddard. Goddard stared back. The whiteness of their faces showed in the dim light. She heard him say, Goddard, and Goddard took him hurriedly by the arm. They walked quickly across to the stairs and up them. She waited to take Oliver's other elbow. Both men had eyes that stared and faces expressionless with too much emotion. Oliver was almost panting. Goddard began to make little sounds that would have suggested incipient hysterics in a woman. Luna turned from the fire to face them. Her lips worked and her eyebrows almost met with agony, but she smiled at Oliver. You have told him, dear? She asked. He crossed the room and bunched her hands in his. I haven't. Oh, thank God, Luna, thank God, was all he could reply. Goddard shut the door.
Let me tell, he cried. It's bathos, and bathos suits me. It's not the Shah, that's absolutely Napu. Those 2 men took a bit of brimstone or sulphur or something into old Hudson's preserves last night. 6 brace of pheasants, sold to a staining poulterer. They were drunk when the boys in blue came for them and waxed disorderly. It must have been a rural Sydney street, less the Home Secretary and Maxims. The village flocked to the show, while we gambolled undisturbed with the spiritualists, hence exaggerated accounts of the cause of arrest. The family name saved. All is saved, and the monsters laid forever.
Luna's eyes sought Oliver's. "All saved," he said. "Only... oh, Luna, the poor girl." When Goddard took his departure, Swanhild walked with him as far as the moat bridge, and they leant on the parapet a little while. The night world was cold and illimitable under its roofing of translucent black sky and quivering stars. The dark water rippled gently. The wind stirred a million little voices in the ivy round the house. "Night is the only really peaceful thing in life," Swanhild whispered. "And though it is only 2 weeks since the Shaw, I feel as though I'd never felt the peace of it before. First, the idea of the monster as a spirit lurking in clear darkness. Then, the worst horror of the truth. Oh, I never seem to have seen the stars without a cloud near them before." End of section 39. Section 40 of The Undying Monster by Jessie Douglas Kerruish. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Envoi. The inquest came to an end with the second adjournment. The police had to admit they were unable to solve the puzzle of the Shaw, and Kate Stringer's fate was added to the list of Danau's unsolved mysteries. It seemed that the aids had never been seriously considered by the official investigators, in spite of Warren's frantic efforts to fix the guilt on them. "I have abandoned the Danau mystery in despair, and have consequently abandoned my profession in chagrin. At least that's what all the enemies and dear friends I own are saying. They don't know I started the tale myself." So Luna spoke as she sat with Oliver in the little Chelsea drawing-room on a fortnight after the finale in the hidden room. "It tickles my North Country sense of humor to end my career with a failure engineered by myself," she added. "On the other hand, it's held in the Danau district that you laid the monster in the Red Sea, on the strength of the servants' tales of our preparations for the last sitting in the room," said Oliver. "Well, laid it is. 10 times since, on frosty starlit nights, I have been through the Shaw or in the room alone with Swanhild or Goddard." "Laid it is," she assented, "and it will remain a mystery to the outer world to the end of time." "Thanks to what you did over poor Holder, dear." "Under Providence and I can do wonders when we give our minds seriously to a problem." She tried to laugh. "Even at that time, the first day, you made up your mind to involve yourself in the family crash," he went on. "It was impulse, when I worked over the dog. We didn't know an inquest would be necessary, and I felt it was worth the risk of holding back evidence for the sake of an innocent family. I only destroyed the evidence after our drive to Hassocks. It was then I felt the virtue go out of me, in the car, and decided to lie and run risks, sink or swim, for you, Oliver." "But what virtue, dear?" "My sixth sensitiveness. That sense clung to me long enough to find the hand, but when next I was in the room I felt no discomfort over handling the thing, as Goddard noticed. That's all. I am no longer a trained supersensitive, but a perfectly ordinary person." "And I, thanks to you, am also an ordinary person. We can start life afresh and together, unburdened by the past." Oliver stopped. "Oh, Luna, poor Kate," he cried. "I dream of her. I don't seem to have realized till now the incredible horror of what I did." "Oliver, dear," she interrupted gravely, "you know what I risk for the right to start life with you. Don't make it too hard for me to make that start hopefully and cheerfully." End of section 40. And end of The Undying Monster by Jessie Douglas Kerruish. Read by Ben Tucker.